Good morning again, year six. I hope you're well and have engaged so far thoroughly with Private Peaceful and are enjoying it. We're going to read some more of it together today. And once we've read those sections, you've got a couple of tasks to do relating to it. The key skill we're particularly focused on today is inference. However, with all of our reading, we're also going to focus on vocabulary and sometimes elements of retrieval because those are really important skills as well. But we're particularly thinking today about inference. Now, to be a good inferential reader, I need to understand um, what the question I'm being asked is asking. So I can't just kind of say something I've unpicked, say a message I've read between the lines. I've got to really understand what I'm being asked to find out. You've got to consider what a character believes. You've got to think about what somebody in a story believes, what they believe to be true, and what they believe of other people. You've got to think about why they might have that belief. You've got to try and unpick, based on your knowledge of a character, why somebody might believe something. And you've also got to, when you're making your answer, really support it with evidence from the text. We try not to just relate things to things we knew already. We try and think specifically about what we know in the text that we've just read. Okay, guys. As I say, we're going to read, I think, 3 pages today. And as we go through these pages, I'm going to ask you to do some different vocabulary tasks emanating from them. So, starting at page 35, that there's a mouse in here with me. He's sitting there in the light of the lamp, looking at me. He seems as surprised to me as I am to see him. There he goes. I can hear him still, scurrying about somewhere under the hay rack. I think he's gone now. I hope he comes back. I miss him already. Now, in the same way as the other two chapters, the chapter opens with this short paragraph with quite a lot of short, punchy sentences, which show that not a lot's happening, but that for me, it shows me that the narrator is being quite reflective. He's not in a very thoughtful way. He is thinking, but he's just thinking about what's going on around him. It feels like he's quite lonely. That might tell me about the setting he's in. It always then follows into the butterflies, which seems to tell me that we're going back in time. Grandma Wolf hated mice. She had a deep fear of them that she could not hide. So Charlie and I had lots to smile about in the autumn when the rain and the cold came and the mice decided it was warmer inside and came to live with us in the cottage. Big Joe loved the mice. He'd even put out food for them. Grandma Wolf would shout at him for that and smack him. But Big Joe could never understand why he was being smacked. So he went on feeding the mice just as he had before. For me, this shows this kind of disconnect between the characters of the narrator and Charlie and Big Joe and Mum, and probably Molly now, and Grandma, because she doesn't know how to get Joe to do what she wants to. She just acts angrily. She smacks him, not because she is going to get what she wants, but because she just is irritated. She's fed up. Grandma Wolf, but Big Joe could never understand why he was being smacked, so he went on feeding the mice just as he had before. Grandma Wolf put traps down, but Charlie and I would find them and spring them. All that autumn, she only ever managed to catch one. That mouse had the best funeral any mouse had ever had. When I read this, I was like, what? What's that now? A mouse funeral? That must be a typing error. And I read it again because I was so taken aback. That mouse had the best funeral any mouse had ever had. Ooh. So this concept, even before I unpick why it's happened or how it's happened, this concept is unusual. It's got me as a reader interested. It's piqued my interest. Big Joe was chief mourner and he cried enough for all of us. Molly, Charlie, and I dug the grave, and when we'd laid him to rest, Molly piled the grave high with flowers and sang, "What a friend we have in Jesus." Now, for me as a reader, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. But I also know that it's probable that some of the characters, and you can be a bit predictive here, will not like the fact that that is being a ceremony which is being observed for a mouse. Now, within the vocabulary on this page, I'd like you just to think about one word. The word I'm thinking about is beaten, which isn't on this page. You'll note on this sheet, on your sheet, the synonym is beaten. So what you've got to try and do is unpick the context of the words on the page, the sentences, the paragraphs they sit within, and identifying which word on the page is synonymous with beaten. Okay? I'll show you that again on the page later. Second page as we move on to page 36. We did all this at the bottom of the orchard, hidden behind the apple trees, where Grandma Wolf could not see or hear us. It's really interesting, I think, that they're doing it where Grandma Wolf can't see or hear them. So I'm thinking now, would she approve of that funeral? Would she like that funeral? If she wouldn't like it and they don't want to get in trouble, that might be why they're behind the tree. Afterwards, we sat in a circle round the grave and had a funeral feast of blackberries. Big Joe stopped crying to eat the blackberries, and then, with blackened mouths, because they'd been eating blackberries, we all sang oranges and lemons over the mouse's grave. Even that is strange. I know it's a mouse's grave, so I know it's all strange, but oranges and lemons, that's a strange song to sing at a funeral. It doesn't seem like a sad song. So that tells me maybe that it's people who don't normally go to funerals, some children who are singing these songs. Grandma Wolf tried everything to get rid of the mice. She put poison down under the sink in the larder. We swept it up. She asked Bob James, the wart charmer from the village with the crooked nose, to come and charm the mice away. He tried, but it didn't work. Again, you can see the writer, Michael Morpurgo, is using these short, punchy sentences to show the folly, the silliness of Grandma Wolf's actions. He tried, but it didn't work. So in the end, in desperation, she had to resort to chasing them out of the house with a broom. But they just kept coming back in again. All this made her nastier than ever towards us. But for Charlie and me, just to see her frightened silly and screeching like a witch was worth every smack she gave us. Again, Grandma Wolf coming across a very unpleasant character, using violence as her way of responding to things that she doesn't like. In bed at night, our Grandma Wolf story was changing every time we told it. They're not treating her with respect if they're talking about her at night. A story. Now the Colonel and Grandma Wolf didn't have human children at all. Instead, she gave birth to giant mice children, all of them with great long tails and twitchy whiskers. But after what she did next, we decided that even that horrible fate was too good for her. Again, as I'm reading this, if we were reading it together, I'd stop there, guys. I'd stop. What do you think she'd done? Because it says here, doesn't it? But after what she did next, we decided that even the fate, which we'd read in the previous sentence, was that she gave birth to giant mice children, even that fate was too good to her. She must have done something horrible to warrant them saying that that was that was too good for her, having babies that were giant mice. Again, here, I'm not giving you the word you're looking for. You've got to find it on the page. So the antonym here, the word with the opposite meaning, is whispering. Can you see if you can find that word? And then fill in those sections for that word. Page 37 then. Although Grandma Wolf, finishing off page 36, although Grandma Wolf did smack Molly from time to time, it soon became obvious she liked her a great deal better than the rest of us. There were good reasons for this. Girls were nice, Grandma Wolf would often tell us, not coarse and vulgar like boys. Again, she's not trying to be popular with the three boys, Joe, Charlie, and Tommy. She just says girls are nice. She's not treating them equally. She's not treating them fairly. She's a sexist. Besides, she was good friends with Molly and Molly's mother and father. They lived as we did in a cottage on the Colonel's estate. Molly's father was groom up at the big house, so he looked after the horses. They were proper people. Sorry, looked after people and made sure people had the right clothes on and helped them in and out of carriages. They were proper people. Grandma Wolf told us, good, God-fearing people who had brought their children up well, which meant strictly. The italics of the word proper there show me that when Grandma Wolf was saying that, she wouldn't say proper people. She'd say proper people. She'd really emphasize it to make the point that the other people she was talking about, this family, were not proper, were not decent, were not God-fearing, were not bringing their children up well, so not strictly enough. And from what Molly told us, they were strict too. She was forever being sent to her room or strapped by her father, which means to be hit with a strap, which would be illegal now, quite rightly. She was an only child of older parents, and as Molly often said, they wanted her to be perfect. Anyway, it was a good thing for us that Grandma approved of her family. Otherwise, I'm sure she would have forbidden Molly to come and see us. As it was, Grandma Wolf said Molly was a good influence, that she could teach us some manners and make us a little less coarse and vulgar. Coarse is a synonym for vulgar, means rude, means unpleasant. means using language you shouldn't do. So thank goodness Molly kept coming home with us for tea every day after school. Not long after the mouse's funeral, it was Big Joe's birthday. Charlie and I had got him some humbugs from Mrs. Bright's shop in the village, which he always loved. And Molly brought him a present in a little brown box with holes in it and elastic bands round it. While we were in school, she kept it hidden in the shrubs at the bottom of the schoolyard. It was only because we pestered her that she showed us what it was as we were walking home. Okay, we'll stop there. For this page, I'd like you to think about the definition of lacking sophistication or good taste. Can you find a synonym for that? So a word which means that definition. So here I've given you the answer, the definition, but you've got to find the word. You've got to find the quotation. So you've got to try and unpick these elements of vocabulary. The other element, so with the page you've got the book quote, you've got to fill that in. You've got to fill the word in, you've got to fill the syllables in, how many there are. What's the definition for that first word, which is synonymous with beaten? Can you use this word once you've identified it in a sentence? And then finally, can you find some antonyms? You need to fill in those missing sections for each one of those vocabulary elements. The second part we're thinking about today is in terms of inference. The question here is, what evidence is there on page 35? So you go back to page 35 in your text that Charlie and the narrator did not like Grandma Wolf. Now, if this were a test, I could only look on page 35 for my answer. I can't look on page 36 because I need to have that evidence from page 35. So have a look at that, pause the video, and see if you can find some evidence. Looking through now, hopefully you can see that their dislike, their disdain, which means when they don't like somebody and treat them poorly because they don't like them, their disdain for Grandma Wolf was shown when the narrator declared that they had lots to smile about in the autumn when the mice came to live with them. Now that could be a 1 mark answer, but I want to get 2 marks. So I haven't really said enough there. I've said that I've got a direct quotation that they had lots to smile about in the autumn when the mice came to live with them, but I haven't said how that shows that they dislike Grandma Wolf. So I extend my answer. This shows they didn't like her, as she would be unhappy about the rodents being present. So I'm trying to use that rich vocabulary rather than just saying mice, 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 mice. I'm using the word rodents. But because they were present, she would be unhappy, which would make them smile. Okay, and that shows that detail. Now within that, you've got these 4 questions, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'd like you to answer those on this page. So underneath the questions, if you can answer those, please. Year 6, I look forward to seeing your answers sent through. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for your engagement today. Bye-bye.